Hi, everybody. This is Virginia Milner with the DeKalb County Library System coming to you with another tutorial, and we are going to do a bracelet this time. I saw a bracelet that I thought was really cute, and it was actually a video, but as you know, if you've been following me at all, I like to put a twist on everything. So this one is a literal twist. What we're going to be making is what I'm calling an orbital bracelet, an orbital twisted wire bead bracelet. Yes, I know it's a mouthful, but what we're going to do is use some twisted wire to create our coil. I'll go ahead and show you. To create our coil around a line of encased beads. So it's really, really easy to make, very simple, very easy to make, and pretty darn quick as well. But that's what we're going to make today. This coil is going to be made of twisted square wire, and the beads are going to be on a round wire pin. So we're going to be using 20 gauge twisted or 20 gauge square wire for the cage, 20 gauge round wire to hold the beads. We're going to use a length of chain, and that is pretty much it. We need beads, two types of wire, and a piece of chain. That's all we need. We're going to be making our own beaded hook for our clasp. That's it. We'll need our regular pliers, round nose, square nose, and cutters, and a ruler so that you can measure everything out. Because we are twisting this wire, we're going to be using two of our pliers, and we're just going to do it, I like to call it, the old-fashioned way. There are several ways that you can twist your wire. You can use a pin vise, and I've got to warn you, I tried that. I got a couple of pin vices, and they just weren't small enough to hold the wire that I needed to twist. Now, I am not saying that they don't work, because I've seen people demonstrate using a pin vise. There's a drawer open behind me. Just ignore that. I've seen people use a pin vise to twist their wire, and it worked just fine. I've not had luck with it. One thing that I have had luck with is using a drill. You just put the wire in the little vise and turn it on, and it just it twists it right up in a matter of seconds. But we're doing it, like I said, the old-fashioned way, by hand. So let's go ahead and get started, because I'm looking forward to this one. I really like the way this one came out, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. So what we're going to need is 20 gauge round wire, square wire. Oh, here it is. I already cut it. Square wire, and a piece of chain, and your beads. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and twist my wire. I have 6 inches of square 20 gauge wire here, and the way I'm going to twist it, you don't have to twist it. I'm twisting it because I want to. I just wanted to do something different. So the way I'm going to twist it is to just make a small loop on one end with my round pliers, just so I can hold it. Just gives me a way to hold my wire. And then I'm going to take my square pliers. I'm going to grab the other end, and I'm going to start to twist. And it's going to take a minute because we're doing it by hand. Just twist it a little bit at a time. Oops, get back on there. And I can either hold this hand steady and just twist with this hand. Or I can twist with both hands. Just a little bit at a time until it looks the way I want it. And basically what twisting it does, I think, is give it some texture and it catches the light very nicely. I'm just gonna twist a little bit at a time. I'm just gonna go up and down the wire. And you can see it kind of twisting. See how it's starting to catch the light? Let me bring it down a little closer so you can really see. Oh, great. I just pulled my camera off of the stand. Let's get back there. There we go. All right. Let me grab everything again. Okay. And it's twist too close. Now you can't see both hands. Virginia. Okay, grab the end and just keep twisting until I have it twisted enough to the way I want it. And again, it's going to take a minute because we're doing it manually. But it really does catch the light nicely when we do this. So there it is, nicely twisted. I'm going to turn that off. I think that's too bright. But, yeah, I think we do need it. You're real close. So you can kind of see how it's twisted. Okay, so let's get started. So when you make this loop, I make a really tiny loop because you're not going to be able to use it for anything unless you untwist it again, which you can. But it's not going to be, it's not going to have the same twist on it that the rest of the wire has. But because we're just using, we're going to be making a loop out of that anyway, it doesn't really matter. So now that I've got my wire twisted the way I want it to be, now that I've got my wire twisted the way I want it, I'm going to make it into a little coil. And it depends on what you want to use. It depends on how big your beads are. You can use a pen, you can use a Sharpie, I can use a smaller pen. It really depends on the size beads that you're using. I'm using 8mm rondelles and 4mm bicones. So my cylindrical item doesn't have to be that big. This pen is just fine for that. So what I'm going to do is take my square twisted wire, and this is very, very strong now because we've just twisted the heck out of it. So it work hardens very, very nicely when you do that. So what I'm going to do is straighten this little end out a little bit. It is really, really tough now. And I'm going to wrap it around this pin. Here we go. Just wrap it. I'm going to keep it as even as I can when I wrap it around here. Now I'm going to take my pliers and push this end down as close as I can get there. And then do the same on the other side, other end. You see that? It was on camera. Okay, there we go. So now I have a little coil there. I can get rid of my pin. So there's my little coil. So now what I'm going to do is thread my beads on my 20 gauge wire. Now I only need 4 of these because the way I did it was alternate bicone, 4 millimeter bicone, 8 millimeter rondelle, then a bicone, then a rondelle, then a bicone, then a rondelle, and a bicone. That's the way my design is going. So now I need a piece of 20 gauge wire to put the beads on. The way that you're going to know how much wire you need is to take your beads, put them on the wire, and then add an inch on each side of your beads in order to have enough wire to make your loop and to wrap your loop, because we're making a wrapped loop, in case you didn't figure that part of it out. So I'm going to go ahead and put my beads on here while it's on the spool. And those of you who get kits, I've got to straighten that out. Those of you who get kits, you're going to have enough wire to make 2 bracelets if you want. So just leave the wire intact when you make the first, until after you make the first one. And then, what the heck? Why is this not going on? Let me cut off that part. Yeah. Okay. Just leave the wire intact for the first one, and then cut it off when it's time to make the second one. And that way you don't have to worry about measuring. Otherwise, again, put all of your beads on the wire and then cut 1 inch away from each end. Give yourself 1 inch on each end of your wire to accommodate for your loop and your wrapping. So with all of my beads on my wire, get on there. So there are my beads. So my beads are taking up an inch, about 1.5 inches of space. So that means I need 1 inch on both the ends. So I need 2 inches plus the 1.5 inches, which means I need 3.5 inches of wire in order to make my pin and have enough to wrap my loops. So I'm going to take this off now that I know how much I need and measure out my wire. 3.5 inches. There we go. Come on. So then I'm going to go ahead and measure off an inch from the end of my wire for my loop. I'm going to bend back my wire, grab my round nose pliers, slide my wire about 1/3 of the way down my pliers. I don't need too big a loop. Go down about 1/3 of the way. I'm going to bring that short tail over my pliers and down the other side until it's going the same direction as my long wire. And then without moving the wire, I'm going to hold on to it, open my pliers back up, rotate them back until they're resting on top of my wire like so. Then I'm going to bring that short tail of wire under the pliers until I have a loop. And now I'm going to wrap my loop. And I just need a couple of wraps. There are 2 ways you can do this. I can either leave my pliers in the loop and wrap, or I can grab my square pliers, hold on to the loop, and wrap. I do not suggest that you use the round nose pliers to do this. because sometimes you end up with little indentations in your loop that you might not want. I'm going to go ahead and hold on to it with my square pliers, and I'm going to wrap my loop up. And I just need 2 wraps. And I'm going to snip off that end as close as I can get to the wraps. And now that little tail is going to go flying across the room if I don't do something to control it. So I'm going to turn it down into my little spool here, then clip it off and just let it drop down to the bottom. You'll see all of my little snippets of wire down there at the bottom of my little spool, because that's how I do it. And then I'm going to take my pliers and push that end down as close to my long tail of wire as I can get, so that it's not sticking up and ready to scratch you or your clothing. Okay. Now I'm going to put that down, because the next thing I need to do is make a loop that will encase my wire and keep it from going through. So I'm going to take my coil, grab my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to make a very small loop right there at the end of my coil. So I'm going to take the tip of my pliers and grab the tip of my wire. And make a little loop. Let's get nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just making a tiny little loop. It's a little grainy. Is that better? I think that's a little clearer, but it still looks a little. Okay. And now I'm going to just make a loop. I'm just going to hold on to that end. I'm going to rotate my pliers just a little bit. And then I'm going to open my pliers and rotate back and keep rotating and squeezing and turning until I have a nice little loop. Now, this does not want to focus. Sorry about that. Get really close. There. So now I have a little loop here. And then this little loop is just sitting right here on the corner. So what I'm going to do is push it towards the center of my coil. I'll turn it up so hopefully you can see a little better what I'm doing. So I'm going to push that towards the center. Just like so. There. Now I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, because all of my beads need to go in there and they need to be encased in the coil. So I'm just going to start stretching it out just a little bit. There we go. It's very strong right now, which is fantastic. That's what I want. I want it to be nice and strong. There we go. There we go, there we go, there we go. Flatten that out a little bit. Nice. A little adjustment there. There we go. Okay, so now I'm ready to put my beads on. So I'm going to slide my round wire, my little pin, inside my coiled wire loop, the little loop. And I'm going to grab my beads and put them on. So I'm going to put one of my bicones on, let it drop right down in there. And then put one of my rondelles on and let it drop in there. And then a bicone. A rondelle. A bicone. A rondelle. And a bicone. Just like that. Yes. So now what I want to do is make sure they're firmly encased. And it looks like they are very nicely encased in there. My coil is long enough to fit over all of my beads, and that was my objective. I need to move it a little more. I can. And then I'm going to go to the other end of my coil and make another loop to wrap around my round pin here, my round wire pin. So I'm going to grab the end of my wire again. I'm going to wrap it around nice and tight and make a tiny little loop around that pin. There we go. Now I just need to adjust my wire a little bit. That got a little pointy there. So I'm going to take my square pliers and straighten that out a little bit. And make some adjustments to the way the wire is circling my beads. Until it looks the way I want it to. Okay, and there's my coil. Isn't that neat? I love this. There it is. Here's my coil. Okay, and now all I need to do is make a loop on the other end and wrap it, just like I did on this side. So I'm going to bend my wire back. I want both of my loops to be going the same direction. I'm going to bend that wire back. I'm going to cut it. No, I don't need to cut it off. I'm going to go ahead and make my loop and wrap it, and then cut off what I don't need. This is a little elongated, so I'm going to squeeze that a bit till it's a little more rounded. It's fine. I'm just being picky. That's better. A little more round. Yeah, that's nicer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make my loop on the other side. I've bent my wire back. I'm going to slide my wire about 1/3 of the way down my pliers, just like I did on the other side. And I'm going to make a loop. This is a little dark down here. Let's move that up. Okay, so I'm going to bring my wire over the top of my pliers, down the side until it can't go any further because the coil's in the way. And then without shifting my wire, I'm going to hold on to the wire, open my pliers up, rotate them back, grasp my wire again, and bring that tail. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat. That always happens. I'm going to bring that tail of the wire under the pliers between the coil and the pliers. I'm going to remove, excuse me, remove my pliers, grab my square nose pliers, take the tail of that wire and wrap it around the stem between my coil and my loop. Let's wrap that around 2 times, just like I did on the other side. Let's make that a little neater. And let's snip off the end of my wire here. Don't need that little tail on there. And again, I'm going to grab my little spool, turn my wire down in there, and cut it as close as I can get to the coils. Go. And I'm going to push that little end down, nice and snug, so that it won't catch on anything or scratch my skin. There we go. Nice. So there's my orbital bead centerpiece for my bracelet. All right, so now we're going to add the chain. Now what you want to do here is determine how much chain you need. Now when I make this, I don't want it to just stick out from side to side like that. I want it to be a little bit curved around my arm. So what I'm going to do is give it a little bend, just a little curvature, so that it will sit more naturally on my wrist. Like that. So it just kind of lays nicer. And now I need to decide how much wire I need, how much chain I need to fit my wrist. I would suggest measuring your piece. Mine is approximately from end to end about 1 3/4 inches long. Measure your wrist and decide how much more you need. My wrist is about 7.5 inches. So subtract the 1 3/4 inches, the 6.5, 5.5. So that makes it 5 3/4 inches of chain that I need. And we're going to be making a clasp and a loop to go on the other end. That's going to take up another inch and about 1.5 inches. So you're going to subtract that as well. I would suggest you go ahead, give yourself, if you have a nice spool of chain, don't cut it. But if you do, then go ahead and make 1/2 of your clasp. In this case, I'm going to make the loop part of my clasp, which is right here. And we're going to have a beaded loop. So I need I'm going to give myself about 3 inches of wire. That's too much, but it's better to have too much than too little. So I'm going to give myself about 3 inches of wire. Just rule of thumb, again, measure your bead. This is about 1/4 inches because I'm using a 4 millimeter bicone. And then you just need 1.5 inches on each side for your for the loop. That's it. About 1 inch and actually not even 1.5 inches because you're just going to wrap it around once. So 1.5 times. So give yourself 1 inch on each side plus the 1/4 inch that you need for your bead. So that's 2.25 inches. Now let's cut that off. 2.25. Measure 1 inch from the end. Bend my wire back and make a wrapped loop. Slide my wire down about 1/3 of the way from my pliers, the tip of my pliers. Bring that tail over the top of my wire, over the top of my pliers. I keep using the wrong term. Over the top of my pliers and down the side. And then I'm going to open my pliers up, rotate back, and bring that tail under my pliers so that I now have an open loop, just like that. So I don't want to close it up yet because I need to attach it to one end of my bracelet. So I'm going to attach that to the closed loop on one end of my bracelet, like that. And I'm going to close it up. So I'm going to grab the base of my loop with my pliers. And I'm going to wrap the tail of my wire around the stem of my wire, just under the loop. And I only need 1.5 wraps for this. Then I'm going to clip off that tail. Put my spoolie in. And use my square pliers to push down the end. Nice and close. Then grab my bead. Put it on my pin. And let's make another loop on the other end. Bend my wire back. Grab my round nose pliers. Slide the wire 1/3 of the way down my pliers. Wrap it over the top and down the side again. Open my pliers up, rotate back, clamp back down, bring that tail between the bead and the pliers, like so, and take the pliers off. And now we're going to attach that to one end of my chain. I want to put the very last link of my chain over the end of my pin and let it slide right down inside my loop. Now I'm going to close my loop up. Grab my pliers, hold on to the face of my wire, and wrap the tail between the bead and the bottom of the loop. Again, 1.5 times is plenty. snip off that end as close as I can get to the loop, or as close as I can get to the wrapped wire. I've got enough wire that I can hold this tail this time. Just hold on to it, snip that off, get rid of the little tail, and let's push down that end. Nice and close between the wrapped coils. Yeah. And that's one side of my chain attached. Now I will be able to see how much chain I need, because I can put it on my arm. Just wrap it around my arm. I know I had already had this cut, so I know exactly how much I need, but you can always take a nice long length, wrap it around your arm, and that gives you an idea of how much chain you need before you cut it off. I would suggest cutting it a little bit longer, just to make sure that you have enough, and then cutting it down to size once you've determined exactly how much chain you need. Okay, but I've got that wrapped around there. I know that's going to be good, and I'm going to be adding a hook on there, so that will give me just enough clearance to close my bracelet. So now let's go ahead and make our hook. So I'm going to grab my 20 gauge wire again, and this time I'm going to give myself 3.5 inches because I'm making a nice little hook here. So I'm going to measure out 3.5 inches. Okay. Then I'm going to measure about 1.25 inches from the end. I'm going to bend my wire until both wires are side by side. Squeeze it as much as I can with my fingers to get those two wires as close together as I can. And then finish it off with my pliers, because I want to get them very, very close together. There we go. There. Okay, so now I'm going to, let me see something here. This looks awfully dark, but I think that's very bright, but that might be better. Okay, so now I'm going to make my hook. So what I'm going to do is take my round nose pliers. I'm going to get really close to the camera so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to slide my wire back. It depends on how big you want your hook to be. This one doesn't have to be all that big. But before I do that, I'm going to go down here to the bottom. I'm going to give myself about 1/2 inch of wire, about 1/2 inch from the short tail here. Here's my long tail. Here's my short tail. About 1/2 inch from the bottom of the short tail, I'm going to bend my wire up like that. So this is what I have now. Then I'm going to take my flat pliers. I'm going to grab my wire right here at the bottom. My two ends of wire are side by side, not crossed over, but side by side, as close as they can get. I would suggest sliding it down to the center of your pliers because that's where the grip is strongest. And then we're going to bend this wire and wrap it around the long tail. So short tail around the long tail. And you want to get a good grip because you don't want this to shift. You need to scoot it over a little more. Wrap it around. Oh, you know what? I'm going to use my pliers because this is such a short tail. And if I'm doing this, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm going to wrap this around with my short plier, my round pliers. Short tail around the long tail. And I just, again, like I did with the loop on the other side, I just made 1.5 wraps. That is plenty. A little bit more. And clip off that end. Bring out the spool again. Okay. And then push down that little end as close as I can get to the stem. Here we go. Eating those ends up there. There. And now I'm going to make my hook. Now, the end of my wire is right here. I like to have the hook going over that end instead of having that on top. I like to have it underneath. Okay, so I'm going to grab my round nose pliers. I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to slide it down almost to the back of my pliers because I want a nice round hook. So I'm sliding it back almost to the very back of my pliers. I have a small, about 1/8 of an inch of wire sticking out, about 1/8 of an inch of the tip of my wire sticking out here. So now I'm going to take my pliers, hold on to the other side of my wire, and I'm going to rotate until I have the hook. Just like that. So there's my hook. And now I kind of like my hook to be a little bit further down. Some people think this little knot gets in the way, but I think it keeps it in line so that when I put my, I fasten my bracelet, this little knob here keeps it from coming loose. So I want to move this down a little further. So I'm going to scoot. I'm going to put a little space in between the pliers. Just a little space there in between the pliers and the wire. So there's my wire. You can see I have a little bit of space there. And I'm going to take my square pliers and I'm going to pull that down just a little bit, like so. There's my hook. I'm going to squeeze it a little closer to the square of the straight wire. Squeeze them together. Here's my hook. Then I'm going to take the tip of my round or square pliers, either one works. And I'm going to put a little ledge here. Kind of did it on its own for some reason. Just going to make a little bit of a ledge. So I'm going to tweak up that end just a little bit. And there's my hook. Now, just so that it makes, I have a little graceful neck, I like to bend that wire back right here at the little knot. Just bend it back a little bit. I have a little graceful curve. And there's my hook. Isn't that pretty? Yay. And I like mine to be very close to the wire. I'm going to squeeze it closed just a little bit. There it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my bead on and make a loop on the other side. Put my bead on there, and I'm going to make my little loop. So notice how my hook is going up and down here. So my loop needs to be going side to side so that it'll hook into my the other loop of my bracelet and into my chain. Now, sometimes that doesn't necessarily have to be, and it doesn't really with this chain, because the chain will twist a little bit, so it doesn't have to. But I just find that it looks better if I have my hook going up and down and my loop going from side to side. So that's what we have. So I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, slide my wire about a third of the way down my pliers again, which has been our rule of thumb since we started. Bring that wire around the top of my pliers and down to where it won't go any further. Then open my pliers up, rotate them back, and bring that wire under the pliers and between the pliers and the bead until I have a loop. Now, before I close my loop or wrap my loop, I need to attach the other half of my chain. So again, I'm going to put the last link of my chain, let it drop down that tail of wire and inside my loop, just like that. I'm going to squeeze that loop together, and before I do anything else, just to make sure it's going to fit, I'm going to put it on my arm and check to see if it looks the way I want it to be. Yes, that's good. I don't like my bracelets to be too loose. Some people like it to hang down their hand. I'm not one of those people. A little bit of drape is fine, but not too much. But this is perfect. And now I can go ahead and wrap my loop. Again, all I need is a 1.5 turn wrap. 1 and a half. I'm going to clip that off. That little tail. My little spool's being fed today with wire ends. Snap that off. Look at all those little ends of wire down in there. They get caught on the label, which is perfect because then I don't have to go hunting for them. And I'm going to push that little end down with my pliers. Now, you want to be careful because we're using crystals here. You don't want to squeeze too tight or drastically. You want to be careful when you're squeezing it so that you don't chip the end of your bicone. I have done that before, and it's not pretty. I don't like crying over my crystals if I can avoid it. There we go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my bracelet. And the darker one. Here's my bracelet. Let's try it on. Let's try it on. Yay. Isn't that pretty though? Yes. All right, let's try it on. You know, I should do this on camera so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to loop that over, wrap that around. Here's my little hook. Oh, come on. I don't know why I do this to myself every time. I really need to hold it against myself. It's hard to do when I'm trying to do it on the camera. Well, the camera's making it visible, but I'm trying to demonstrate how easy it is. And I'm not doing a good job of that, am I? Ugh. Okay, I'm just going to have to hold it against myself where you can't see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. And there is my bracelet. Yay, 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 yay. Back this up a little bit. A nice view of it. There it is. Nice. And I love making my own clasps because then I can extend the beauty of my centerpiece. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with just the chain, but I kind of like some additional gorgeousness. And you know, you can always cut up your chain and add a bead or two down here if you really want to do it up. Those of you who get kits, you're going to have 12 bicones and 6 rondelles and enough chain and wire to make 2 bracelets. Again, I did one, I started to make this for Independence Day, but I said, well, we can make it for Independence Day, but I also wanted to show you how you can make it for any day you want. Honestly, I think the red and blue one is gorgeous. It doesn't have to be for Independence Day. That's just what I did, but isn't that pretty? And it's so easy to make. That's it. That's our piece for today. I hope that you like this because I most certainly do. Ta-da! There it is. There's our orbital. Get over there. There's our orbital twisted wire bracelet. I think that's a good view. Really, I don't. Let me turn this off. I don't know. Now I have too much shadow. Oh, lights, lights. But what do you think? I hope you like this. I know I like it. I like this one too. Very pretty. But I hope you like this video. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. And this is something that so many people can make and wear. You can make it with all different colors. I'm putting on the other one. You can make it with all different colors. It doesn't have to be a particular theme. The twisted cage that you make is very, very easy to do. Then you put it on you put beads on a pin. You don't have to alternate the beads the way I did it. I just thought it gave it a little special touch to do it that way. And that's the way they did it in the video too. I liked it. So I kind of emulated that. Anyway, there is our bracelet for today. I hope you liked it. I hope the video worked out for you. Let me know. Tell me in the comments. Tell me on my email at jewelrygin20@gmail.com. That's JEWELRYGIN20@gmail.com. Or you can comment on the library Facebook page at facebook.com/DeKalb Library. I'm holding this up. I want you to keep looking at it at a DeKalb Library. That's DEKALBLIBRARY. That's again, facebook.com, facebook.com/DEKALBLIBRARY. Look in the comments, put jewelry with Jen in the comments. All of the videos will come up. Go down to the comment, post your pictures because I want to see what you make. I love that part. Post your comments, your likes. Let me know what you think, what you thought. If you have any questions, we want to hear it all from you. We love to get communications from you in regard to how these are working out for you. And if you even have any suggestions and things you'd like to see, I would love to hear that. I love it when people do that. So anyway, that's our program for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, have a great week. Have a great weekend. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.